Country's first confirmed case of New World screwworm in Maryland, according to health officials there. This is a flesh-eating parasite that officials say was found earlier this month in somebody who had recently traveled to El Salvador. The good news, they're saying that the risk this spreads is very low. This parasitic worm is usually found in animals. It can be found in pets, for example, but it can be pretty damaging beyond that. It can kill whole herds of cattle, and the USDA estimates a bad outbreak could devastate the beef industry in Texas to the tune of nearly $2 billion. I want to bring in ABC medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Dr. Kavita Patel, you knew if there was a flesh-eating parasite, we were going to be talking about it on this show and what we need to know, right? We thought this was eradicated, didn't we? Didn't we think this was pretty much wiped out?
Yeah, you're right, Hallie. It was eradicated. This was done decades ago for a fascinating mechanism. We actually raised billions of sterilized screwworm flies. So we raised the flies, sterilized them with radiation, and then dropped them out of planes. You feel like this is a science fiction movie. It was real. Over Mexico and Central America, because the flies can't reproduce, they can't propagate the screwworm fly. So that's basically how we created this barrier zone, which has worked for decades until recently, as it's broken down kind of in that Panama, Colombia region, and then it can spread from there.
Is it not at all bad for humans? Is it a little bad for humans? Can it not spread to humans? Like, how concerned should we be?
Yeah, so the concern obviously for humans is there. It's treatable. So it's not just that we need to identify it, but it's also, Hallie, the implication for cattle and for crops and for people, for animals. So it's people, animals, all of our ecosystem that can be exposed to this. So what happens basically is they kind of hatch their eggs and larvae into like an open wound. And this can be in any animal, including a human, but it can be in cattle. And then once the eggs hatch, they then actually eat the flesh. And unfortunately, obviously, that cannot do any good for any sort of cattle ranchers or ranchers and farmers in general. And it results in culling these crops. And if it can happen to a human, whether it's from travel exposure, weakened immune systems, that's exactly how we saw this Maryland case progress.
Can it spread?
Treatable, recognizable.
Okay.
It can, humans can't, it can. Yes, it can spread, but this is again why we're seeing that reproduction of those sterilized flies come back into the forefront. Because what we need to do is really kind of stop this from propagating and any reinfestation that could happen. So that's the most important thing that we can do. And of course, staying away from anything or recognizing it, just as this individual did.
Dr. Kavita Patel, we're glad to have you on, walking us through all of it. Thank you very much.
We thank you for watching, and remember...
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor to our powers. Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rucha HaKodash. Hey, give it double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that have taught us this truth, that are constantly ruling well through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Hey, peace, mercy, and blessings to the beloved Akim that are out there pushing this word wholeheartedly in truth and in sincerity, that are not wavering to the left nor to the right, but constantly staying on that straight and narrow, fighting for your crowns in these last days that we are truly living in. Even shalom to the few sisters, the Agwabs that are out there, and even shalom to the Israelite foreigners. Those that may look like the other nation, but their seed line is going back into our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm the brother Iraq, coming back, waiting another lesson to the Lord, willing to edify and feed the lambs of the Lord. I pray this lesson is edifying, concise, and straight to the point. All right, and just going to be just quick, fast, all right, which I perceive is to be, you know, another sign that the Lord is given. All right, as end time, you know, news and prophecy, all right, which is another form of pestilence. Okay, and I want to read first Luke chapter 21. All right, because our Lord Yahweh Shai said that there was going to be a time that, you know, earthquakes were going to take place, famines were going to hit, pestilence, all right, people are going to see fearful sights. These are all part of the great signs to, you know, look forward to, that, you know, the end was nigh. All right, so this is Luke chapter 21 and 10. It says, then said he unto them, nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. All right, and there's still wars going on between the Russian and the Ukrainians. There's still war going on between the Palestinian and the 1948ers. And war is constantly being spoken about, all right, because that's what the spirit the Lord has out there, all right, even here in the states of Babylon, all right, which is America, all right. There's war being brewed up, civil war and things of that nature, okay. And it's the Lord spoke about foreseeing the seasons of the times, okay. So it says, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilence and fearful sights and great signs shall there be from heaven. All right, so the Lord spoke about the pestilence, all right, which this is a pestilence, okay. All right, these screwworms, all right, and he saw things that his science and his technology can overcome the power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Abishai, and he clearly can't. All right, no matter how much he splices, manipulate genes, and tries to offset things, the will of the Lord shall be done, all right, and performed, okay. And these flies, or these what they're calling them, they come from flies, but they're saying that they're a type of parasite. This is what the Lord could have used during the time of the ancient Egyptians, okay. The Hamites, okay, when the Lord brought plagues upon their cattle, all right. And this thing doesn't only affect cattle, it can, as you heard in the video in the beginning, it can also affect humans that have cuts. All right, so let's read this right here. It says, the new world screwworm parasite, which eats living flesh, infects first American in Maryland. It says, a tiny fly no bigger than a housefly lands on an open womb, maybe a scratch, a surgical incision, or even the moist crease of a newborn navel. Within days, what starts as an itch becomes a writhing mass of larvae, their hooked mouths tearing into living flesh like microscopic piranhas. The pain is unbearable. The smell is rotten meat, and if left untreated, death. All right, so this is something that people can die from, all right. Which, hey, the Lord can have this happen when there is no chance for calling for aid, medical treatments and things of that nature, where you need a doctor to get rid of this shit, okay. All right, this is the type of stuff that the Lord can have take place during the time of Jacob's trouble, okay. All right, so let's keep reading a little bit more on it. It says, follow in a matter of weeks. So, yep, look at that. Let me read that again. It says, and if left untreated, death follows in a matter of weeks. All right, so look how fast this thing can kill you. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. It's the very real threat of a new world screwworm, a parasite so vicious it was once wiped out in America, only to slither its way back across borders, itching closer to U.S. soils with every passing month. It says, for decades, this flesh-eating menace was a distant nightmare confined to Central and South America after a heroic mid-century eradication campaign. But now, with outbreaks flaring in Mexico and travelers unknowingly carrying the parasite into the U.S., the question isn't if it will return, it's when. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is scrambling, pouring millions into sterile fly programs and border traps, but history shows that once the parasite digs in, rooting it out is a war of attrition. All right, so this is something that's taking place right now. All right, let's grab another matter of fact, hold on, let me see, because I wanted to grab the word pestilence as well. All right, the AI overview, it says the pestilence refers to a virulent and devastating epidemic, disease, or a generally destructive force. The term originates from the Latin word pestis, meaning plague. It is famously known as one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which Esau don't have no understanding of that, often associated with the biblical book of Revelation, although this specific depiction evolved into popular culture. It is, at its core, pestilence is a fatal, contagious, and widespread infectious disease like the bubonic plague. All right, so, the Lord is going to send pestilence. All right, and, it speaks about that in the book of Second Ezra. All right, let's get that real fast. All right, Second Ezra is the 15th chapter. All right, so I wanted to grab a point out of there. Second Ezra is 15. I believe it's verse 10 on down. Yep, Second Ezra 15:10 says, "Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will now suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt." All right, and America is spiritual Egypt, the place where the true biblical Israelites are in bondage, the so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Americans. All right, we're held captive under the modern day Pharaoh, which is the self-proclaimed white man. All right, the elites of the society. Okay, the banking families. You have the Rothschilds, the DuPonts, the Bilderbergs, the Gettys, the Oppenheimers, so on and so forth. All right, they're the ones that you don't see, but they call all the shots. So we're underneath them. Okay, it says, "But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof." All right, so the Lord did smite the original Egyptians. Okay, and the Lord is doing it again in these times. All right, smiting this place. Okay. Give me a second, hold on. This is what I'm looking for. Exodus 8:20. It says, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and says unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are." So let's look this word up, flies, all right? Because, this ain't your average type of flies that, come into your household. Let me see. Swarms of flies. Let me see, it might be the word swarms. Let's see, it says a species of flies, gadflies, very troublesome to persons, so called from sucking blood. Let me see. Described by Philo, who suppose its name to be from its boldness, Devitamosis. Almost all the Hebrew interpreters understand it to be a collection of noxious beasts as a miscellaneous swarm. Let me see. It says, understanding blata or intialis, called in Dutch and German but which is a creature that rather devours things than stings men. All right, so these type of flies were devouring men versus them stinging. Okay, I never looked up a gadfly. I don't know what that is, but let me just look it up. All right, Slack, I'm just gonna look it up what this is. All right, a gadfly. Let's see what that, I never looked that up. A gadfly. See if they got any images. All right, this is what a gadfly looks like. All right. And you know the word gad means troops. All right, so you know the Lord can have gadflies pop up, you know, or any other type of different types of flies or whatnot, you know, to devour, all right, and drink blood and destroy livestock and, you know, take people's lives away. Let me see. Let me go over here and type in screwworm. Screwworm. Alright, so this is the screwworm. It says the New World screwworm is a parasitic fly whose larvae infest the living tissue of warm-blooded animals, including livestock, wildlife, and rarely humans. The maggots burrow into the wound, feeding off the host's flesh. So that's also drinking blood and causing severe damage, infection, and potentially death if untreated. The fly is a significant concern for the U.S. livestock industry, and eradication campaigns have been successful in the past, though recent activities in Mexico has raised alarm about its potential reestablishment in the U.S. All right, so you got these type of, you know, flies that are popping up. So this is what their little larvae look like. And then, you know, these type of flies right here, they look like regular house flies. All right, so, you know, we just in them type of times where, you know, the Lord is just making moves on this place. All right, and, you know, this is what Yahweh Shai told the wicked scribes and Pharisees. You know, he said to, you know, clean a cup or make clean, you know, the inside, okay, versus the outside, you know. So, in other words, Yahweh Shai was saying, you know, we got to get our spirits right, okay. All right, Yahweh Shai cuts these Pharisees out, all right, because on the outside, you know, they profess themselves to be, you know, spiritual and heavenly men, okay, but these men were nothing more than hypocrites and being wicked. All right, so, you know, these are examples that, you know, we are not to be like, and we have to make sure our inner man is purified, all right, before it's too late. All right, this is Matthew 23 and 25. It says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. It says, thou blind Pharisees, clean first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also." All right, so, you know, we got to clean the inside, which is our spirit. We got to make sure our minds are right, okay, you know, before this dreadful day comes. All right, and the Lord has given us time. This is why we have this grace period. All right, and even though that we have this grace period, all right, the Lord said, the beloved apostle Paul said, use not this grace period for the occasion of the flesh, okay, you know, seeing that, all right, we at the end. So let me see, let's see where it's at. Okay, here it is, Galatians 5, and matter of fact, hold on, let me get it in there. NLT, let me see. Galatians 5. Galatians 5 and 12 in the NLT, it says, I just wish that those troublemakers who want to mutilate you by circumcisions would mutilate themselves first. It says, for you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. Matter of fact, let me read that in the KJV. It's more better in the KJV. It says, for brethren, you have been called unto liberty. All right, that's not freedom. Liberty and freedom is two different things. It says, only use not liberty for an occasion to the flesh, but by love serve one another. All right, so, you know, the point is not to use our liberty to the occasion of the flesh. All right, meaning that we have to be more in the spirit, more tapped in. All right, we have to examine ourselves. All right, because the times are short. All right, I'm gonna get that as well. Okay. Matter of fact, I'm gonna get it in the Apocrypha. All right, because this is gonna be judgment. All right, this what the Lord, this type of stuff the Lord gonna send for, you know, wicked 2/3 of our people. Just a fly that lays a egg on an open womb, and you know, its babies just eat you alive, type of deal. That's a hell of a way to go out. Ecclesiasticus 18 and 20 says, before judgment examine thyself, and in the day of visitation thou shalt find mercy. All right, so, you know, scripture said we got to examine ourselves. All right, and when we examine ourselves and, you know, we're spotless and doing what's right in the eyesight of Yahweh Shema Shad, then the Lord will have mercy on us. So I'm going to pretty much leave it right there. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the Lord's elect. Let me get out of here by giving all praise going on to our power, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem Kakadash, Brakate Yahweh, Brakate Yahweh Shai, Brakate Yahweh, and Brakate Yahweh Shai. Shalom, Akim, Shalom.